afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to go through how to add and subtract integers. Now, this video isn't aligned with a specific assignment, but the ability to be able to add and subtract integers is something that goes along with more than one IXL assignment and more than one OMHS quiz and test. Our focus for this video is actually going to be to go over 3 different strategies. So 3 different ways that you can go about adding and subtracting integers. So as you're watching this video and I go through the 3 ways, be thinking about which one makes the most sense to you. And whichever one works best for you personally is what you should use to be able to add and subtract integers, because we want something that's going to click in your brain so you can understand it and be able to get these questions right. The 3 strategies that we're going to be covering today are just using the basic rules, which is how we're going to start so you can get an overall understanding. But when I go over those rules, if memorizing them and following that flow chart doesn't work for you, then the second strategy is going to be number lines. That's a little bit more visual. And then the third one is using counters. This is one that's a little bit newer to me at least, and I personally love it. I think it's a great way to figure it out, and it's also another visual method. So if you know you're a visual person, just stick through the rules so you can hear it, but you may find that you like strategy 2 or 3 best. All right, first let's just go over what the integer rules are. No matter what strategy you end up using, this is a great page for you to pause the video on and take a screenshot. And if you use a paper notebook and you have a printer, print it out, glue it in the front. Or if you have, a little bulletin board, or, you like to put big Post-it notes or like little reminders for you, this is a great thing to use because integers is not going to go away. And so having this for reference, no matter what strategy you use, is a really good tool until you get comfortable and you don't need it anymore. So this first picture on the left here that just says integer rules and has a blue outline, that's actually all the integer rules. So there's a little bonus of multiplying and dividing on there for you, but that's not going to be covered in our video today. So we'll just quickly talk through these rules and then we'll hop into the strategies so you can see examples along with them. But I want to make sure you can hear the basics first. When you are adding integers, let's start there, adding integers. If you choose to use the rules, there are 2 different ways you can look at it. Is you look and see, all right, are the numbers that I'm adding, do they have the same signs or do they have different signs? If they have the same sign, so look at these examples here, -3 and -4, they're both negative numbers. Or 3 and 7, they're both positive numbers. These ones are the easiest because you just simply add the numbers together and you keep the sign the same. Because if you picture that number line in your head, you're starting at a -4 and you're continuing down the negative side of that number line and adding -3. And so that's why your answer is a -7. So long story short, if you're adding numbers and they have the same sign, you add them and keep the sign the same. But if you notice that you're adding and they have different signs, so here we have a negative number, a -5, and a positive number, a 9. You actually think of this a little differently. To follow the rules, you subtract them and take the sign of the larger absolute value. All right, last rule to go over is what to do when you subtract. When you subtract, there's, an explanation here, but I've given a more in-depth one over to the right. You're going to use something that we call keep, change, change. If we think back to earlier lessons when we worked on dividing fractions, you remember how we used keep, change, flip, and that made it easier for us, that made it possible for us to do the division? That's kind of the same thing here, and it's a very similar phrase. We're going to use keep, change, change, and that turns our subtraction problem into addition. So once we use keep, change, change, we just have to cycle on back and use our two adding rules, which is awesome because that means if you can get the adding rules down, subtracting isn't that big of a deal as long as you remember to keep, change, change. So that stands for you keep the first number the same. You change your subtraction sign here to become a plus sign. And then you also have to change the sign of the second number to be its opposite. So in this case, it was a -6. So the opposite of a -6 is a +6. Now that we've done that, you can follow the rules of adding, and it's a little bit easier. All right, let's go forth and do some examples using these rules to help you understand them a little bit better. And then we'll go through two other strategies in case you realize this one just isn't quite there for you yet. All right, on this slide here, I've kind of condensed what we saw on the previous one. We have a little graphic reminding us of our adding integer rules, as well as it written out in bullet points. And then we have our little graphic reminding us to use keep, change, change for subtracting, as well as it being written out here in a graphic. So this is another great opportunity for you guys to add to your notes or take a screenshot when all of these examples are done. All right, let's get to our first example, and we're using the strategy of just simply following the rules. So our first question here, we have -8 plus 10. Well, I notice that I'm adding. So my two adding rules, I need to look and see if my signs are the same or if they're different. I notice here that I have -8 plus -10. These numbers have the same sign, so I'm going to add them and keep the sign the same. So -8 plus 10, I'm going to add them together. 8 plus 10 is 18, and then we keep the sign the same, making it a -18. All right, for our second example, 5 plus -25. Once again, am I adding or subtracting? We are adding. So now that I know that I'm adding, do these numbers have the same sign or different signs? They have different signs. The 5 is a positive number and the 25 is negative. So because their signs are different, we're going to subtract them and keep the sign of the larger absolute value. All right, let's take that one step at a time. We're going to subtract 5 and 25. Well, 25 minus 5 is 20. And we're going to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So absolute value, remember, is always the positive version of the number because it's our distance from 0. Well, if I just look at the numbers and ignore the signs, 25 is bigger than 5. And 25 is negative, meaning that's the sign we're going to keep, and our answer would be a -20. Let's try another one of those. -9 plus 3, another adding problem. So if we're following the rules, if that's the strategy you end up liking best, we're adding. So do these numbers have the same sign or different signs? Different signs. The 9 is negative, the 3 is positive. So because they have different signs, remember to subtract your numbers. 9 minus 3 is 6. And then we are going to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Well, between 9 and 3, 9 is larger and 9 is negative, meaning our answer would be a -6. All right, let's try our final example here on this page using the strategy of following the rules. -10 minus 5. We have our first subtraction problem. So because it's subtraction, I need to use keep, change to turn it into an addition problem. So I keep the first number the same. I change my subtraction sign to addition. And then I change the sign of my second number and I make it the opposite. So it's currently a +5. It's now going to be a -5. Once we've done that, we just cycle on back and follow whichever adding rule applies. Because now we've rewritten it as an addition problem to make our lives easier. So we're adding. Do these two numbers have the same sign or different signs? They have the same sign. They're both negative. We now have a -10 and a -5. So because it's the same sign, we're going to add them together and keep the sign the same. So 10 plus 5 is 15. And if we keep the sign the same, our final answer is a -15. All right, if that strategy isn't for you, that's totally fine. Let's see if the number line one works. We have two number lines given here. Now, what I would suggest to you is if this is the method that you choose, is you can just draw or maybe even print off a number line. And then if you have a whiteboard or if you have, a page protector and you slip the paper in there, you could use that and use a whiteboard marker. Or if you don't have that, then just use like the tip of your pencil or the tip of your pen to just kind of move along so you can reuse the same number line over and over again for different problems, okay? When you use a number line, you have to pay very close attention to the signs because whether you have a positive sign or a negative sign or a subtraction sign, that tells you what direction you move on the number line. So for this first one here, we have -6 plus 4. That first number tells you where to start. So I'm going to start at the number -6. I'm going to put a dot here so you guys can have a visual, but of course you could always just start there with your finger or with the tip of your pencil if you're reusing the same number line over and over again. Then our sign here is a positive, a plus sign. Well, if the positive side, the plus side of the number line is to the right, so that tells us that the direction we're going to count is to the right. And then the final number is how many spaces we are going to count to the right. 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lands us right here with an answer of -2. There we go. I just used the number line. I didn't have to worry about the rules at all. So maybe that's something that you like. Let's try it with a subtraction problem. All right, we have a subtraction problem. I'm still going to use keep, change because even though I can do this without using keep, change on a number line, it makes it more confusing. I kind of have lots of like reverses and undoing things going on, and it makes it easier to make a mistake. So no matter what method you use, if you see a subtraction problem, do keep, change. It will make it much easier for you. We are going to keep that first number the same, which is 2. We are going to change our subtraction sign to addition. And then we are changing our second number to have the opposite sign. So a -5 now becomes a +5. And when we have a positive number, we don't really have to write a plus sign. So that's really just like 2 plus 5. All right, you might be able to do this in your head, but I'll still show you how to use it on a number line. So this tells us, all right, we start at the 2, and then this plus sign tells us we go to the right, and we're going to go to the right 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that lands us right here at a final answer of 7. I'm actually going to clear this and we're going to do one more because I'm realizing we didn't end up doing any with negatives, and it would be important to see how you would move with more negatives. All right, here we have 2 more problems using the number line strategy. -1 plus -5. So once again, look and see, are we adding or subtracting? We are adding, therefore we don't need to use keep, change, change, because we're just simply adding. It's already in the format we like. So to use our number line, the first number tells us where we start, which is at -1. The second number tells us our direction, which would be to the right. And then the second number is how many spaces we need to move. But in this case, it says I need to move -5 spaces. Well, that negative there is saying, hey, we're doing the opposite of 5. So therefore, what's the opposite of going to the right? Going to the left. So this is saying, hey, we got to do the opposite, meaning we really need to go to the left 5 spaces because we're adding that -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brings us down here to a final answer of -6. Let's do one more using this strategy. 2 minus 7. Oh, we got a subtraction sign. Doesn't matter what strategy we have. Let's use keep, change, change and turn it into an addition problem. Keep the first number the same, which is 2. Change your subtraction problem to addition, and then change the second number to have the opposite sign. It originally was a +7. The opposite of that would be a -7. Now we're ready to use that number line. First number tells us where we start at a +2. And then the plus sign says, all right, we're adding, let's go to the right. But we're adding a -7. Uh-oh, that negative there says, no, 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 we got to do the opposite. So the opposite of going to the right would be going to the left. So we are going to count to the left because that's towards our negative numbers 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lands us at a final answer of -5. All right, maybe that strategy worked for you. If not, we got one more coming up. All right, this third strategy is using counters. Now, counters are something that you maybe remember using in previous math classes. They're a great manipulative, but you don't need physical counters. We can draw them and it makes a great visual for you. And I personally have realized how cool this method is. So if you haven't liked the other two, fingers crossed, this one will be the winner for you. So if we have a counter, we're going to use plus and minus signs to help us count it out. The first one here may be a little easy, but that's okay. It's good to start with one like that. So we have 4 plus 4. Well, that just tells us that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 positive numbers. So I'm doing 4 plus signs. And then we're adding 4 more positives. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If we tally all of those up, that gives us 8 total plus signs, meaning 4 plus 4 is a positive 8. All right, let's try it with some numbers that have negatives involved. 4 plus -1. All right, our first number is a 4, so I'm going to represent that 4 with 4 little plus signs. And then we're adding a -1. I'm going to represent that with 1 negative sign. Those positive and negative signs, when you use the counter method, they cancel each other out. So anytime you have a plus and a minus, they cancel each other out. And what are we left with? We are left with 3 positives, giving us the answer of a +3. How cool is that? All right, 12 minus -6. All right, even though we're using the counter method, as soon as you see it's a subtraction problem, use keep, change, change, make it addition, then use your strategy. We are going to keep our first number the same, which is 12. We are changing our subtraction sign to addition, and then we are changing our -6 to a +6. Meaning we really just have 12 plus 6. And you might be able to do this without counters, but we'll go ahead and use the counters anyways. If we are doing 12 plus 6, we would start off by doing 12 little tally marks. So I have 12 plus signs, and then we're adding a +6. So because it's a positive, we're going to do 6 more positive numbers. All right, they're all positives, so that means I don't have any positives and negatives like I did in the previous question to cancel out. So I can just add them all up together, giving us a total. If I add all of these up, the 12 green ones and then the 12 positive red ones, an answer of 18. All right, let's do one more example here. -4 minus 3. Uh-oh, it's subtraction. We need to use keep, change, change first. So keep the first number the same, change subtraction to addition, and then we're going to change the sign of our second number, making that +3 a -3. All right, we're going to use our counters here. I have a -4, meaning I'm going to put together 4 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm adding 3 more negatives. 1, 2, 3. All of them are the same sign. See how they're all negatives? Because they're all negatives and they're the same, we can just add them up and lump them together. We have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negative signs, meaning our answer is a -7. And we're actually going to do just one more question for good measure. All right, I've added one more problem to the bottom. We have -3 plus 8. All right, our first number is a -3. So we're going to draw out 3 negative counters. And we are adding 8. So we're going to draw out +8 counters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This time they're not all the same. They're not all positives. They're not all negatives. So we need to cancel out any that match up. So every pair that matches up, a negative and a positive, they cancel each other out. And then whatever you're left with is what we're going to tally up. And we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus signs, giving us the answer of a +5. All right, I hope this video was helpful, guys, to make adding and subtracting integers a little bit more clear to you. It will take some practice, but go back and find the section of the video that was the strategy that was your favorite. Rewatch it if you need to so you can use that strategy and get really good at adding and subtracting integers. Bye.